Hey everybody, welcome once again to the Football Fandemic. Today we are catching up on some of the news around the NFL. Going to hit the rumors and rumblings before free agency, all of that and more right now on the Football Fandemic. Well, hey Josh, I was just telling Josh just before we got on, I didn't even know we were doing a podcast today. We had kind of talked about at the end of after the Super Bowl, we did an episode or two and we're like, okay, we'll catch back up when we hit free agency and then, draft and whatever. And I was like off on my days, but free agency starts soon, doesn't it, Josh?
Yeah, it gets rolling on Monday. That's when they
tampering?
can. Yeah, that's when all of the news will break about who is signing with what teams, and it
Right.
rolls in for that first hour, and it's like, wow, that was a really quick negotiation. And then
legal
Wednesday,
tampering period, and then on Wednesday, right at the time everybody signs. You're like,
yep.
okay.
And that's when they all become official. But Brandon not with us. He might join us later. He says that he's got some work to do at the office, but I think discerning minds can gather that he's probably working on either the Jair Alexander trade as one of the owners of the
Right.
Packers, or a Myles Garrett trade. I heard, my sources have said that he is kind of the guy they bring in to close the deal. He's
the
their closer. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I believe it. I don't know if he's wanting to close out Jair Alexander, but it looks like that might happen.
Yeah, he's one of a few guys that have requested some trades recently from their teams. But
hey, let's just take that as a springboard and get right into some of the news and headlines that we have not got to cover over the last few weeks, and then we'll start talking about all of this pre-trade, free agency, whatever coming up. So I'm letting Josh lead all this because, as I said just a few moments ago, I didn't even remember that we had a podcast today until just a few minutes ago, but I am here for the reaction and throw in my 2 cents. But Josh is the real brains of this information. He's probably on that side of me. Josh is the real brains of this podcast today. So Josh, what do we got?
Well, yeah, teams are starting to make some moves to clear up some cap space right before free agency. So we've got some releases, we've got some trades. We talked about the trade requests of Jair Alexander and Myles Garrett, so we can start right there.
Okay.
Yesterday, another guy requesting a trade in Seattle is DK Metcalf.
Yes.
Their star wide receiver that has just an athletic freak that kind of has been lost a little bit in the shuffle since Jackson Smith-Njigba was drafted a couple of years ago. He still puts up good numbers, but he wasn't as dominant as he was through his first couple of seasons. So I think he's probably looking for a place that he could be a true number one guy. You talk about the physical traits. I don't know if there's anyone better in the league in terms of just their speed, jumping, and catch radius. It's DK Metcalf.
That's typically a Chris Ballard go ahead type guy. He always looks for those. What's that chart they use? The
RAS, I think, might be the one.
The RAS. Yeah. I always want to call it the athletic freak chart. And Chris Ballard seems to love those athletic freaks, but I can't imagine Indy being a place he'd want to go. With Michael Pittman Jr. already being here, and Josh Downs, and maybe Adonis Mitchell,
Yeah.
So I don't know what team looks like it does not even have a number one that's viable that he might want to go to.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the teams that don't have the number one also don't have a great quarterback. If you're looking at the draft and thinking, okay, Cam Ward is going to go within one of the top 3 picks, maybe you go to Tennessee or Cleveland or the Giants and hope that something can work out there. Otherwise,
Giants have Malik Neighbors. I mean,
that's true. Yeah. So I mean, I guess the Raiders could be an option. Pete Carroll. I mean, that's the only connection that you can kind of really make there, and they don't really have a number one
in conference. I mean, conference, a division, right? Seattle and no.
They used to be back in the day. They used to be in the same division when they were both in the AFC, but no longer. They've been split apart. But that could be an interesting move. Again, if I was DK Metcalf, I know beggars can't be choosers, and there's a chance he might not get traded at all, but I would, if I'm already requesting a trade, I'm also saying, hey, can we wait to see how some of this free agency shakes up and see where the quarterbacks are going to be before you send me off to like Siberia or something? Because if I'm the Seahawks, I'm saying we're just getting the best deal possible before the draft. But he's one of the guys that has requested a trade.
And he doesn't have a no trade clause with, any, so they can choose whatever team they want and be like, what do you give me for him?
Yeah, not a ton of leverage there. And it's kind of seems a little odd to me because Jackson Smith and Njigba, he's kind of been like their slot guy, and DK Metcalf is a really well-established outside guy.
And they just got rid of Tyler Lockett, right?
Yep. Yeah, that's one of the guys that has been released as teams. I think it's saving $15+ million in cap space for the Seahawks moving forward, so he doesn't have to compete for targets there. Right. Maybe there's some more internal stuff.
It used to be just they would pick one or the other to have a big week, but without the one, he gets to be the other, or without the other, he gets to be the one. That's a better way to put it.
I think fantasy owners know that very well because Tyler Lockett would have these huge blow up weeks, and then DK Metcalf would be left in the dust, and then vice versa.
Yeah.
Some other trades that have come to fruition, one that Josh Hopt is going to be super excited about and has been super excited about in the group chat. Deebo Samuel to the Washington Commanders, and they only had to give up a 5th-round pick. Man. So, like, that is some good value. The Commanders have a ton of cap room. They have draft capital, so they can attack this offseason in a couple of different ways. They can sign big guys in free agency, but they can also make moves like this for teams that are just looking to dump some of their expiring contracts. Samuel, maybe not the same guy he was, but early in the season, the Vikings played the 49ers, and Samuel looked fantastic. It kind of, I don't know if I think he had an injury in that game, and that could have been what hampered him throughout the rest of the season because his numbers weren't great after that. But early on in the year, he looked like the Deebo Samuel of old. We'll see if that injury kind of is some long-term hampering that he suffered in that game, if it just kind of slows him down by a step. But if not, then you've got to.
How long has he been in the league?
I believe 2018 or 2019 was his first year. I'll look it up right now. But
Tyler Lockett had been in the league for 10 years. I think I was reading. I'm like, what? That doesn't seem right. But he has. Sometimes I feel like people are still younger than they are.
Yeah. He's been in the league since 2019. He's only had one season where he's gone over 1,000 receiving yards, but they've also used him obviously as a running back at times too. He doesn't like that. So I think he's going to, I don't know how often he's going to be used in that role with Washington, but I mean, you pair him with Terry McLaurin, who can play both outside and inside, and then Deebo Samuel on the inside. You're maximizing what Jayden Daniels can do next season. Like he was very good in 2024 and he still has room to grow. And that's a high ceiling that he hasn't hit yet. And Deebo Samuel, I think the thought process there is that he can help Jayden Daniels realize that ceiling.
And they let Jahan Dotson go, right?
Yes, Jahan Dotson, they traded at the beginning of the year to the Eagles. So, and he had a big catch in the Super Bowl. So they don't have Jahan Dotson. Zach Ertz is a free agent. De'Ami Brown, who is the big playoff hero for them, especially against the Lions, he's a free agent. So they've got some holes, but I mean, Deebo Samuel certainly fills that one really well.
Yeah.
There were a couple of other trades that were made in the last couple of days too. Much to the scorn of Brandon Colmark, the Chicago Bears are rebooting their offensive line, and they're doing it with Jonah Jackson and Joe Thuney. They made a pair of trades. Joe Thuney, an all-pro guard, and he goes for a 4th-round pick. So that's kind of the advantage you get when you've got cap room, is that you can take on some of these big deals that these other teams can't afford. And Washington and Chicago are reaping the benefits of that. Thuney, versatile, played left guard, played right guard, played tackle throughout the playoffs. And again, was all pro at the guard position this year. And then Jonah Jackson is a guy that was with Ben Johnson in Detroit before. So they're getting the pieces in place to really nail down a running game, I think, for Chicago. They had Tevin Jenkins, but he's a free agent.
Can already see Ben Johnson putting a thumbprint on this team starting now with these moves, and that only bodes well for you Chicago fans. I'm sorry, you Green Bay fans and
Yeah.
Minnesota fans.
And Minnesota fans. But as Brandon has often said, and as I will also echo here, Chicago wins the offseason every single year, and then it just doesn't come to fruition. So like
But I
they
tell
are
you what,
the
doing it
paper
with
tigers.
offensive line and defensive line is much better than doing it with receivers
true.
and quarterbacks and running backs.
Yeah, and it's like Tevin Jenkins was probably their best offensive lineman, and he was a guard, but he's a free agent, and he's one of the top available guards in free agency, and it's going to be an overpay. You're going to probably have to pay more for him than you would have to pay for both Joe Thuney and Jonah Jackson, maybe combined. So like you can replace one guy with two guys. Both guys have been to the Pro Bowl, and one guy has worked with Ben Johnson before. Like if Ben Johnson wants that guy as his like go-to pulling left guard, I think if you're a Bears fan, you're like, yes, yes, yes.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So those are the trades that have happened, and the Bears are starting to kind of win in the trenches, or at least attempt to win in the trenches for the 2025 season.
And we'll see if it plays out. We'll see.
We will. Some other cap shedding moves, the releases that have gone on. We've got a list of like 6 that are bigger name guys. We mentioned Tyler Lockett. Davante Adams gets cut by the Jets. Joey Bosa yesterday got cut by the Chargers.
And that was purely cap stuff. You have to know.
Yeah.
It's not like Joey Bosa is like, well, he's just not very good.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's because of the Justin Herbert contract, which is just monumental right now. There's so much cap money throughout these first 2 or 3 years of that deal. It kind of becomes less in the final few seasons of the contract. But right now, like they're going to be over the cap a lot because of Justin Herbert. Bosa's gone now, and then Khalil Mack is an unrestricted free agent. So they are losing both of their top tier edge rushers, and it might.
I would sure love to see a Joey Bosa hit a Colts uniform. Do it.
Yeah. There's going to be plenty of teams that are going to be going for his services. Maybe he'll pair up with his brother in San Francisco, and you got the the Bosa duo. The Eagles released a pair of defensive backs: Darius Slay, James Bradbury, and then a couple days after the Super Bowl, and after our last podcast, Raheem Mostert was released from the Miami Dolphins. He led the league in touchdowns 2 years ago, and then kind of had an off year this year. They've got A-Chain. They've got a lot of different guys that have had success running the ball in the Mike McDaniel system. So they didn't feel the need to keep him around. But those are 6 guys that are now no longer on the teams. Joey Bosa, obviously the big one there, as is Davante Adams. You mentioned you'd like the Colts to go after Joey Bosa. Do you think they'll have any interest in any of these other guys?
I don't think they're going to go for a receiver, so DK Metcalf, Davante Adams. I mean, the Colts fans are constantly saying we need better receivers, but they just gave Michael Pittman like a new contract. And so I don't see them going after a wide receiver that's going to end up being, money, because I don't think either one of those guys are going to be cheap. So the edge rusher, who were some of the other guys? I don't think we'll go after Mostert. I think we got a running back in Jonathan Taylor, and then like whoever we put with him, I think we feel comfortable there. Who else was on that list?
And then there's the defensive backs, Darius Slay, veteran guy, and then James Bradbury.
I do know that last year, Chris Ballard said, I feel good with our guys. They're young, whatever. And he took heat and was blasted over that all year long. Oh, you feel good with our guys. How they doing? Our secondary was not our strength. Will he? Now, here's the thing. I don't know what's going to happen with the Colts because Ballard obviously is on the hottest seat he could be on. If he does not do better than 8 or 9 wins next year, if he does not get to the playoffs, he's gone, and he knows it, and everybody knows it. And so we all expect that there's going to be a different look to free agency this year, because in the past, Ballard is like I don't pay for the big guys. I don't do the big splash. I wait till later and do some signings, and some of that has worked out. But this year, he has to show that he's trying hard, and he has to do something to get more wins or he's guaranteed to be gone. He's already had so many like lifelines that it's crazy, to be honest. When you look at kind of what his record is since coming here, and I'm going to say when Ballard came, I was a huge Ballard fan. I always liked those guys who were quieter in the beginning of free agency. Bill Polian, when I say I like that, it's always more fun to like have stuff to talk about when the big names happen. But when you get past that heat and you can look back with calm eyes, I've always liked, okay, we didn't overspend. Look, that guy didn't hardly do anything anyway that everybody paid so much for. And we got these guys for smaller contracts and they did well. Bill Polian was that. Chris Ballard was that. But that was easy to do when you're in winning. You know, when you have Peyton Manning, when you have Andrew Luck, and you have teams that are winning, when you have teams that have been doing what we've been doing, where they just look like, who in the world are we? And, you know, we're struggling to be third in the AFC South. What's going on here? You know, it's like, well, I guess, were we second in the AFC South? We might have been.
You might have been. It was a bad AFC South, so I think you were.
It did not feel like a second, like
right
place. And even if it was, that's not saying a lot. I think we can expect more from Ballard. Will he go after some cornerbacks this year like he should have gotten somebody better, veteran player with more proven? You know, he had these young guys who were learning, and it came back to bite us big time. Jalen Jones got better as the year went on, but we were missing some safety and cornerback help. So I could see that. I could see a rush, an edge rusher. That's why I was like, oh, I'd love to see Joey Bosa. Like those two are positions we need. We talk about the big talk in the Colts forums are we need a true tight end, not like all of these almost tight ends. And this one guy who's always hurt, who every year we have such great faith in, Jelani Wood's going to be something. And then we never see him on the field. Like for 3 years? Is that how long he's been on the Colts? 2 years?
Yeah.
Whatever. He's just that guy who like always is the promise dangling out there. It's like, oh, he could be good. And then nothing. And he was one of those, you know, athletic freak guys, the RAS top of the chart dudes. And that's why he was drafted. Same as Anthony Richardson, you know, same as we get a lot of them anyway. I could see a cornerback possibly. Now, do I want to get a cornerback who's like on the decline? No, I know Darius Slay last year played great. Right? He was like, I feel like he did really well.
He was, he knows the Eagle system super well. And I think Lou Anarumo ran a coverage scheme that was similar to that in Cincinnati. So I think the fit is there. He's getting older, but cornerbacks kind of can be a little bit more ageless, I feel like, than other positions in the NFL, especially when you're playing more zone defense. And then James Bradbury, he's played both corner and he's played safety. Julian Blackmon is a free agent, so that's a need that the Colts may have in the deep secondary if they want to go with the Bradbury to safety experiment again. I don't think it worked out too well with Philadelphia though for him.
Right. And that's the place where you have fear to go grab a guy early, pay a lot, and then be kind of on the decline and it not work out. You're like, ugh. I think with Joey Bosa, I could feel content that it's going to work out, even if he ends up being a bigger contract. Now, we're not like in the very top money, but we have some money for free agency. If we're going to spend it, I would want to see, you know, our defense obviously needs to be better. And I think having a rush and a better secondary are the best places to kind of get that better defense, because you give them less time with the ball and less targets to hit, you know, while you're giving them less time. So I would love to see both of those areas addressed. The others, I don't think we'll go for. How about you in Minnesota?
Yeah, I mean, right, like wide receiver we're good at. We do need corners. And Minnesota's another team that runs a similar scheme. Brian Flores kind of stole it from Vic Fangio after in 2018 and uses that along with some of pairs it with his exotic blitzes. So Darius Slay could be that guy. Other than that, I don't really have an interest in Raheem Mostert or Tyler Lockett at this stage. If we can somehow get Davante Adams, I think Adams and Aaron Rodgers are going to be a package deal probably again for whatever reason. Davante Adams.
Quick, talk to me about where you think they could end up.
Well, Joey Bosa, I mean, he's going to have a lot of suitors.
No, Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams, where they could end up.
Aaron Rodgers. Well, I think Aaron Rodgers could potentially go to the Giants for one. The Tennessee Titans, I think, are another sneaky one.
Really?
If the Titans want to hold off on, because Cam Ward is a good prospect, but like he would have probably been the 5th or 6th quarterback taken last year. So if I'm Tennessee and I can maybe hold off on waiting for a better quarterback class, which next year's and the year after, I believe, are going to be better, I would be fine with trading for Aaron Rodgers and then trading out of the top pick and getting some ammo. You probably don't even have to trade for Aaron Rodgers. Honestly, he's going to be cut. And then it's going to be similar to the Russell Wilson thing from last year, where he signs the cheap contract because he's already getting paid so much by the New York Jets. I
can see him like thinking, okay, I want to stay in New York because I just bought a house here. So the Giants, they play in the same stadium. That could be awesome. And then I could put it to the Jets and say, look what you lost. I could see him maybe Pittsburgh being a place that would be interesting to him. But man, Tennessee, that's like a move, and it's a whole different feel. And he doesn't have who's his number one receiver? Like Malik Neighbors, that's enticing with the Giants. With Pittsburgh, I'm trying to think of who the receivers are as well.
Yeah, it'd be George Pickens would be his top guy in Pittsburgh. Right. Calvin Ridley would be his top guy in Tennessee. He does have a home in Tennessee, or a place of residence in Tennessee. So, and in Nashville too. So that is like, okay, that's the kind of the twist there is. And if I'm Tennessee, like I make that alluring to him. And then I get the draft picks by trading out of the first round. And then in 2026 or 2027, whenever Aaron Rodgers retires, I use those picks to try and get one of the guys that are going to be in there moving forward. Obviously, we have an idea of who those guys are, but they need to show it in college the next 2 years, or continue to show it in college the next 2 years before settling on them as these top guys. But I think Aaron Rodgers buys you that time and makes you competitive as well with Brian Callahan. So like if he's a guy that's on the hot seat after just 1 year, like Aaron Rodgers is a perfect bridge to bring on. And then especially if Davante Adams is gonna
pill,
that's true.
Kill you.
That is very true. So, and maybe him and Davante Adams do end up coming in that package deal. But that's where I'm leaning towards him going to either the Titans or the Giants.
Okay. And so Davante heading in with that package, Davante would obviously be one of his, if he went to the same place, would be a great target for him. So even if he only had Calvin Ridley and Davante Adams, that's only, I say, those are some pretty good receivers. Malik Neighbors and Davante Adams, pretty good receivers.
Yeah, he's going
to. Well, I'll wait on that. I was going to say, I'll tell you a rumor that I absolutely hate, but I'll wait on that. Continue on.
Some guys that are not going to be available in free agency real quick because of their retirements are Jason Peters, Sam Hubbard, and then Zach Martin. Peters and Martin, probably Hall of Famers. Sam Hubbard, he retired at age 29, not a Hall of Famer, but was a good defensive player for Cincinnati for a couple of years. Two other guys, at least not right now, that are not going to hit free agency, T. Higgins and Trey Smith. Those guys are kind of like the number 1 and number 2 potential free agents, but they both get franchise tagged by Cincinnati and Kansas City respectively. And it's the second time in a row Higgins has been tagged. So even though it's only going to be a 1-year deal, that money goes up. I think it's the 26. Average of the top 5 through the first year. 26 million, even though it's for 1 year, that's a good payday for him. And then Joe Burrow is holding the Bengals officials front office at gunpoint, making sure they sign both him and Chase to a long-term extension because those guys, or else he's going to he'll go anywhere if they don't do that. And Cincinnati will be left on their own. And then some extensions that happened. Matthew Stafford, for a little bit, there was a rumor that maybe he could be traded, but they reached a deal to stay in Los Angeles.
Yeah,
he did.
He decided to stay.
Yeah. And there was, to get a little bit off the trail here, was he met with Tom Brady at a ski resort, and there were two different reports. There was one from a Fox guy named Jordan Schultz, who said that this was a planned meeting, which seems like the logical take. You're not just going to randomly run into, typically not going to randomly run into the owner of a team that you're potentially going to play for on a ski slope. But Ian Rappaport says, no, this was just like completely accidental. They bumped into one another. This is a ski resort, which a lot of athletes go to, but they spent some time together. And then both Ian Rappaport and Jordan Schultz met at a Starbucks and exchanged, like, during the combine, which is the Starbucks where they all go to in Indianapolis or whatever, and exchanged words and almost got into a fisticuffs of sort. And NFL security had to be called because, like, it was just like, I don't know, like it would have been really interesting to see a NFL insider fight. We have these insider battles all the time, like on Twitter, where Ian Rappaport says one thing, Adam Schefter says another. But now to see it like in a box, like you gotta cash in on that. You know, everybody's doing the whole boxing thing. We could get a Rappaport versus Jordan Schultz type deal. I think Jordan Schultz's dad is Howard Schultz. Is that that's the owner of Starbucks? I feel like, or the CEO.
Howard Schultz.
What did he do?
Is it Schultz? Yeah, maybe it is. I've got the book up on my shelf. I was like looking to see if I can see real quick. Yep, Howard Schultz. That's right there. That's the guy.
So he's the owner of Starbucks, and Ian Rappaport's coming into Jordan Schultz's home and is trying to fight him. But anyway, none of that happened. He didn't go to the Raiders. He stays in with the Rams. So all of that was much ado about nothing. And Matthew Stafford will be the quarterback. And Sean McVay says that it's still like a year-to-year type thing for Stafford. And we
did talk
fun.
About Cooper Kupp is not going to be there, right? We talked about that.
Yes, we did.
Ended? Yeah,
we did. So he's not going to have Kupp, but he will have Nacua, and the Rams have a little bit of money in free agency as well. Some other guys that got extended. Zach Bond was going to be a free agent. He excellent player for the Philadelphia Eagles. Probably right now the best linebacker in the game if he continues what he did last year. Max Crosby just signed a 3-year extension with the Raiders. So there were some rumors. Yeah. And there were rumors that, well, does Max Crosby want out of Las Vegas after all of this? He's going to stick around 3 years and I think $106 million. So he's getting the big payday. Saquon Barkley was not set to be a free agent, but the Eagles extended him, rewarded him with a nice contract. And then Osa Digazua was franchise tagged by Dallas, and then they quickly reached a 4-year, $80 million extension. He was going to be the number 3 free agent. So the top 3 free agents all get franchise tagged. Khalil Shakir and Andy Dalton both sign extensions with their team. Dalton will stick. Dalton. So if the Colts don't get that old quarterback to back up Anthony Richardson.
So I'm gonna go ahead and go there since you said the Colts, and they're looking for. There was the big news out of the combine that was already reported earlier, and I'm not sure what the impetus behind this is, but they're very much stressing there's going to be a quarterback competition, right? And so I guess they're trying to make Anthony Richardson work harder. It's almost hard to see a place where Anthony Richardson doesn't get to start, in this last year if we're keeping him. But the rumors started flying about who's going to be the backup quarterback. It's not going to be Joe Flacco. That's just not going to happen. And so a lot of people clamoring, Justin Fields come in. He has the same skill set and he would be good in this place. But then I started hearing all these rumors about Daniel Jones. Oh my goodness, please don't let this happen. I do not want Daniel Jones as a Colt on the backup quarterback.
He's a little too young for the Colts for their backup quarterback position.
Old
I
enough.
feel like. Yeah, maybe Jacoby Brissett comes back now that Marcus Mariota, Jimmy G, your former Eastern guy.
I mean, yeah, I don't. Here's the thing: I don't even know who I want out of this list. Nobody's like inspiring.
Or Russell Wilson.
No. I was not I didn't think Russell Wilson would do as good as he did in Pittsburgh, to be honest.
Yeah.
I just feel like he's kind of beyond that. Although last year he was, and here's the thing, he was throwing good in the beginning, but it didn't last. It didn't last.
Yeah, it definitely didn't, and he still has like trouble reading defenses right away. But yeah, there's some guys there, and if you want a guy that won't threaten Anthony Richardson at all, Tim Boyle, he threw for 4 touchdowns and 13 interceptions during his college career, and still somehow is finding jobs in the NFL. So you could always go that route.
I want somebody who would push Anthony Richardson. I don't want it to be a non-threat. I want somebody who would push to possibly be better than him. It's just hard to know. Is there somebody on that list?
Yeah, it's slim pickings. I feel like if you want a guy that's not going to be like, that's in that middle ground, that's not going to demand a high contract, but also is at least somewhat good if Anthony Richardson fails spectacularly, which I still believe in Anthony Richardson. I still think he's going to make it work. But yeah, it's kind of like, well, you could get Zach Wilson. You could get.
Here's the thing: if I'm picking off the list of people you just said, I'm going for Justin Fields.
Yeah,
and the reason is he was young. Yes, he never made those great decisions, to throw well instead of run. He looked a little better at the beginning with Pittsburgh. I was unsure why they benched him when they did, but then Russell Wilson came in and played well. But the biggest reason is it's the same sort of skill set. And so if you design an offense that includes the run, the quarterback taking it and running as well as all the other options, you can continue that same offensive plan if you have to throw Justin in place of Anthony Richardson, if you have to switch. Whereas like when we switched from Anthony Richardson to Joe Flacco, everybody like immediately knew this guy is not going to run, pressure him hard. He's just going to stand back there because he's old and a statue. And so you would at least have that similarity. People still wouldn't know what to do. You could still use some of those same offensive schemes. So my vote right now, as crazy as it is, because I was never a huge Justin Fields fan when he was in Chicago, I felt like he did a little better when he was in Pittsburgh. And yes, it was the team carrying him and he was just doing at the end of the game, he did some, things to make those wins happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I would go Justin Fields.
Yeah, the potential there is also going to always be there with Justin Fields, because he still has the cannon of an arm. He's probably more accurate than Anthony Richardson. The only problem has been like his timing has been so bad throughout his NFL career. It's a big if, but if that ever clicks, like you're looking at a superstar quarterback. It hasn't clicked for 5 years, so like you'd think that'd be enough time to kind of like see what happens. But I mean, Rich Gannon won MVP at age 36 after being a terrible quarterback throughout his career. He goes to the Raiders and it all clicks for him. So I like the idea of taking a lottery ticket on Justin Fields.
Yeah. And the nice thing is he's been through 2 teams already, so it doesn't feel like, well, he's obviously going to take that job away from AR. It's like it's truly going to be a competition, a push between those two. Now, he may not want that because that's what he got with Russell Wilson, and he lost.
Yeah.
Right. So he may not be looking for that. But.
Yeah, let's take a look at the quarterback carousel, because there are some quarterbacks available either via free agency or via trade that are starting caliber, and Justin Fields is one of those guys. We talked about Aaron Rodgers and where he might end up. You want Justin Fields with the Colts? Like I have a pick right now for him, but let me go through these other quarterbacks and we can kind of discuss where these guys end up. And it could be just like a carousel where they move from one place where one guy was at and then he moves, and it's just all circles together. So Aaron Rodgers, Kirk Cousins would have to be available in a trade, which I think he would be. Sam Darnold, free agent, Justin Fields, Russell Wilson, and Daniel Jones, all free agents. Jones probably not all. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. He was a starter last year, so maybe he started.
He got like a huge contract in New York, right?
Yeah, he got a $40 million deal because of the Minnesota Vikings. They crushed them, or not crushed them in the playoffs. They only won by 7, but they made our defense look absolutely terrible. And he threw like 3 touchdowns and 300+ yards. And they're like, yeah, we'll give him an extension. So it was just a psyop operation by the Minnesota Vikings. Of course, yeah. They wanted him to be their backup quarterback in the future, and it ended up working out for him. But that's actually who I have Daniel Jones going with. I think he's going to sign. I want the Vikings to get him as the backup to JJ McCarthy because I think he's a veteran guy. And KOC worked with Sam Darnold. Daniel Jones is like a faster, burlier version of Sam Darnold that can run a little bit more. So maybe he can make it work with Daniel Jones if JJ McCarthy isn't ready for week 1, and he's probably going to be cheaper than Sam Darnold as well. So I have Daniel Jones going to the Minnesota Vikings.
So let's just stick there and because I agree with that. I agree that I think he'd make a great backup there. And I don't know. Well, I mean, we can talk about what teams need quarterbacks, but my next thought was if he's there, Sam Darnold is probably out. I think everybody agrees with that. And the problem I see with Sam Darnold is I don't know where he can go because like a lot of the places that would need a starting quarterback are starting to get things figured, their plans figured out, and he's going to cost a lot of money. So where do you think Sam Darnold can go?
Well, I think if there was a market for him, the Vikings would have tried to franchise tag and trade him because then the teams would have been, if they really wanted him, more willing to like jump in line by offering the draft picks and like just close off his ability to negotiate with any other team. That didn't happen. They did not franchise tag him. They say they're working on an extension or like a 1 or 2 year deal. That's what some reports are saying. That could be agent talk so that he bumps the price up once he hits the open market. I don't want him back in purple. I mean, I'd be fine if he was back in purple, if it was like a lesser deal, but I would be kind of like mumbling and grumbling about it all season long. But I think he's going to go to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think for Sam Darnold, you need, if you want to be a team that puts the eggs in the basket of Sam Darnold, you need to be a head coach that has security. Mike Tomlin probably has that security. He's the longest tenured head coach in the NFL. You have to obviously be a team that needs the quarterback. Steelers do, that has the weapons. They have George Pickens. They have the big tight end Darnell Washington. They've got a couple of other like Calvin Austin the third had some big moments for them this year. They have a decent offensive line, so they can put the infrastructure in place around him. Arthur Smith is a proven, if we're talking about quarterback whispers, Arthur Smith made Ryan Tannehill one of the best quarterbacks in the league one year, like in terms of just pure statistical nonsense. So Arthur Smith
nonsense.
So Arthur Smith has that track record too. I think that's kind of that's where I've been thinking since like November that Sam Darnold would end up. And I think that is going to come to fruition with the Steelers. They have the cap space as well to make it work. So that also helps.
Yeah, it was for me, I wasn't sure if the Pittsburgh Steelers would try to keep one of the quarterbacks, but I don't feel like they feel like either Justin Fields or Russell Wilson are the ones to take them anywhere. So I think both of those guys could leave Pittsburgh unless they can get one to sign as a backup if they don't get an offer somewhere else. But I can't see Russell Wilson deciding to stay as a backup to Sam Darnold.
No, absolutely not.
I think it's going to happen. But yeah, I could see Sam Darnold in Pittsburgh. I never thought of that until you said it, though. To be honest,
it's kind of like it's a sneaky, interesting pick because they're a team that has made the playoffs, and he can take them potentially to the next level. Like obviously, the last 2 games he showed some sort of regression, but for 15 games he showed who he could be if he reaches his ceiling. And I think if I'm him and I'm looking for a place that can maximize that, I think Pittsburgh is the best of the available options that he'll have this season. Maybe the New York Giants as well. But I don't know. But like I said, I think if you're going to put your eggs in the Sam Darnold basket, you need a head coach who's not on the hot seat. And I think Brian Daboll is very much on the hot seat moving forward. There's a chance he might not have any other option. But if not, well, in my scenario, he would, because he would have, I think, the chance at the second quarterback, or a chance to trade up with Tennessee, where Aaron Rodgers goes to Tennessee. So they could get like Cam Ward. But in any case, I don't think he would go to the Giants because I don't think Brian Daboll wants him. And I also think there's some ghosts at MetLife Stadium that would prevent him from going there.
Those ghosts still remain. So here's the question. Does Pittsburgh have the cap space to do whatever Darnold's going to need as a contract?
I believe they do. I believe they're top 10 in cap space. Because when I was kind of researching it in November to try and get like a head start, and they were one of the teams. I think they have like 50 to 60 million, and that was the projected before the cap actually went up even further than it was projected to go up. So they have a little bit even more space there. One of their offensive linemen is going to free agency, James Daniels, but they played most of the season without him because he was injured anyway. So their offensive line really wasn't too big of a problem even without James Daniels out there. So they're not losing a ton of talent, at least on the offensive side of the football. And their defense is still very, very good. And carried Justin Fields and Russell Wilson to the playoffs last year. So Sam Darnold can certainly get there, I think, with Pittsburgh if they decide to go in that direction.
Yeah, that's I heard Sam Darnold linked to the Colts, and I'm like, I just don't think we can handle. I don't want us to handle a huge quarterback contract while we're still trying to see if AR is the guy, because AR is going to be the guy who gets that contract if he ends up being it, or if not, we have to go in a whole different direction or something. So
yeah, and I think it's probably just like a 2 or 3 year deal for Darnold with the Steelers or wherever he ends up. I don't think it's going to be something super long term. Going on to another guy that is going to be available. Let's talk about Russell Wilson, because we've hit kind of the Steelers trifecta now. What you mentioned it, he's not going to want to be a backup anywhere, so his options are potentially even more limited than like Justin Fields, who probably is a little bit more willing to be a backup if needed. What do you think? Where do you think Russell Wilson is going to end up?
This is like such a hard thing, because like, okay, you said, Brian Daboll has to think about winning. Do you feel comfortable bringing in Russell Wilson when you saw him 2 years ago in Denver just looked like junk? Even though he had the year he had with Pittsburgh, your team may not have whatever that chemistry, whatever that combination that Pittsburgh had that helped him be so good. Do you feel comfortable if you're a guy who's like, you need to do something? I don't know that New York is going to be interested.
No.
Tennessee, if they don't get Aaron Rodgers, could they be interested? I mean, it just sounds like a Tennessee kind of move.
It does. Yeah.
To be honest. But I'm trying to think, who else? Raiders? Do they have, who's looking for, I mean, what teams, let's just put this out there. What teams are quarterback needy right now?
So I think, the Titans, the Steelers, the Jets, the Raiders, the Cleveland Browns.
The Cleveland Browns. Oh, are they still paying that $230 million? They sure are.
They will be, unless they can finagle themselves out of that contract via legalese with some of the more recent allegations against Deshaun Watson. If they hadn't been told beforehand, I guess there was like a clause that they could get out of it. So maybe they're trying to do that. The Giants need a quarterback. Potentially the Saints. I don't know if Kellen Moore is completely sold on Derek Carr. He didn't seem completely sold on Derek Carr in their press conference. And then, I think that is it.
That's the ones. And you look at all those teams and you're like, oh, they're all so bad. But that's wise. They don't have a quarterback. When you don't have a quarterback, it's hard to be top of the league.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Where do I think Russell Wilson could end up from that list? I mean, I just don't know, like, how Kellen Moore would, like, if he would think Russell Wilson could be a Saint, or do we finally see Russell Wilson say, okay, looks like I'm stepping away, I'm done?
I think that's definitely an option if he doesn't get an offer to be a starting quarterback somewhere, or at least the chance to compete to be like a real chance to be compete to be the starter quarterback for some team. So like that we could have seen the last of Russell Wilson in that playoff game against the Baltimore Ravens. If my pick, if he does go somewhere and he does get a job, I think it will be with the New York Jets. And it's because they don't necessarily have the draft capital right now, unless they think Shedeur Sanders is going to fall, to move up and get Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward, whichever one is not off the board first. The Raiders are ahead of them. The Giants, the Browns, and the Titans, teams that we've already mentioned, those guys are all ahead of them for a potential quarterback. So if they're going to draft somebody, it's going to be a project guy. And if I'm them, I'm going Jalen Milroe from Alabama, who just has like a huge like arm, and he has like the Justin Fields sort of potential if his timing gets down. Fields is a little bit more accurate as well, but he could be a project guy to sit behind Russell Wilson. And you can see kind of where that goes. I don't think your head coach is on. I don't think Aaron Glenn is on the hot seat necessarily, obviously, because it's just his first year. I think this is a place where you're truly starting to build something, but you also keep you want to keep Garrett Wilson interested. So the Wilson to Wilson connection could keep Garrett Wilson interested. You want to keep these guys invested still in winning, and Russell Wilson could win you some games. Especially if the defense improves on what it did in the latter half of last season when they were just putrid. And if Sauce Gardner goes back to form, then you have a defense, you have a veteran quarterback, you have sort of the same situation as the Pittsburgh Steelers, and you either have a project quarterback that you're developing, or you get yourselves in line to get another quarterback, an actual like first round starting quarterback next year. And it's just a 1-year deal. It's a bridge, and it might just be like the bite the bullet move for the New York Jets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that.
I can picture Russell Wilson like it's deja vu. I feel like I've seen Russell Wilson in a Jets uniform right now, and I'm seeing that in my mind as I talk about it.
If it happens, we're all going to start claiming you're psychic.
My Anthony Richardson MVP pick for the 2024 season would.
I'm just assuming you were off by 1 year.
Yes, 2025. That's true. Yes, I think so too.
I'm not going to lie. The longer we go with Anthony Richardson, like having injury years and out and benched, and you start to lose that initial like hope that you had. It's hard to continue to cling to it. Because what I'm looking for, what you're always looking for in a quarterback is somebody who comes in and they just have this competitive spirit and this look in their eye that is like, I have to win. We have to be better. And I just see such a nice kind of smiley guy from Anthony Richardson. I'm like, even if he has all this talent, does he have the mental, you guys have got to get this together. We have got to get this, I just don't see that. And so there's like the fear starting to creep in. I'm trying not to lose hope.
Yeah.
You don't have a Peyton Manning, right there, like that attitude. You don't have the Tom Brady who would get out there and yell at people and be like, there were certain players that they just have this something about them, and that's what makes them great. I'm hoping that kind of thing can develop. But like when you look at Justin Fields, I never saw that. When you look at so many of the young quarterbacks who come in, you're hoping they get to that.
Yeah, you definitely are. And yeah, I think, and I think his timing is good. I think he's usually in rhythm. I just think like the footwork to get the accurate football is one thing that needs to be fixed. And I remember vividly, and this is why I still have hope for Anthony Richardson is Kevin O'Connell, when he was talking somewhere about last offseason about what can be fixed in a quarterback. They're like, someone asked him a question like, are you guys thinking Drake May? Are you guys thinking Jay McCarthy? What does footwork have to do with it? And he said, I think footwork is one of the easier things that we can fix. Now, it hasn't been fixed yet for Anthony Richardson. And maybe it won't be, but if it is, it's 2025 Anthony Richardson MVP hype train once again coming out from Phoenix here. So
well, let's hope he's meeting with, he's practicing with Josh Allen. He's meeting with this, what's his name? Tom. I can't remember the guy who, such a quarterback whisperer, works with him. Well, maybe the guy who worked with Josh Allen.
Oh yeah, he's working with the guy that I don't know his name, but he is working with Josh Allen's like athletic trainer.
Right.
So
and he's practicing with Josh Allen. So you can see there's some sort of connection going on here. Maybe they get it together for him. Let's hope.
Yeah, and then last guy that's available, last quarterback. Well, he's not officially available, but I would think he's going to be traded. Is Kirk Cousins. The Falcons would be eating most of his contract in the trade, at least for this year. For the next 2 years, the money's not guaranteed, but if the team wanted to keep him around, they would foot the bill there. But for most of next year, the $40 million is going to be paid by the Atlanta Falcons one way or another. So maybe the Falcons just keep him as a backup, or maybe they can get some good trade capital, since the burdensome contract doesn't really kick in until the 2026 season. And I think, for me, I think he's going to go to the Cleveland Browns, because I don't know if you have the Deshaun Watson contract, and even if that stays, even if they're not able to finagle themselves out of it, I think you bring in Kirk Cousins and draft another rookie quarterback behind him, so that Stefanski gets a guy that he worked with in Minnesota, that went to the playoffs with in Minnesota, a guy he knows well, kind of like the ideal prototype quarterback to run the offense that Kevin Stefanski wants to run.
That makes it, I forgot Stefanski. It's so crazy to think about Deshaun Watson when he was in Texas and who he is now.
Yeah.
I remember when he was there was rumbles about he might not be in Texas. This was before the big holdout and all of the, 22 allegations and all that stuff. He was good. And I don't know what in the world happened, but he is not good anymore. And I don't know where that changed.
I mean, I get most of it again is the timing, and a year and a half out of the NFL, then season-ending injuries in each of the next 2 seasons. You're not getting a lot of reps, and you kind of lose that timing a little bit. And I mean, he still has a good arm, but I think that's just what it is missing all that time with both the suspension and the injuries. I think if he was ever to reach the level he was at, I think he would need a couple of injury-free years. Mm-hmm. And I don't think the Cleveland Browns and Kevin Stefanski in particular, even though he's a 2-time Coach of the Year award winner, I think he's also on the hot seat. So I don't think you can wait a couple of years for him to get back to form and hope that he doesn't get injured in any of those 2 years, so that those reps continue to pile up for him. Right. And the Browns, they have the second pick. They can have their cake and eat it too by getting Kirk Cousins to help them win now, and then getting Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders to be the next guy. So Kirk Cousins allows them to, not put all their eggs in the basket of a rookie quarterback, maybe buys Kevin Stefanski an extra year or two before to develop the quarterback and keep his job. If Kirk Cousins performs well, they win games, he gets to stay on, and then he moves on to Shedeur Sanders in 2026 or 2027, depending on how long they want to keep Kirk Cousins around. So I think it would be a ideal fit, but I think it would also go terribly for the Cleveland Browns, because it always goes terribly for the Cleveland Browns.
Well, you said, you don't want to put all your eggs in the basket of a rookie quarterback, but I mean, they're putting so much into the position of quarterback. I mean, you think about, they've still got this $230 million contract of Deshaun Watson. They're drafting a super high draft pick for a quarterback and bringing in someone else. You think about the resources they're putting in the quarterback, and then they're losing the bright star they had on the other side of the ball, Myles Garrett. It's Cleveland Browns for just a little brief moment. Things looked like they were turning up. It looked like the Browns were going to be something when they had Baker Mayfield and Myles Garrett, and it looked like they were taking off. Now they're just Browns again. And it's are they going back? It looks like it. As sad as that is.
Well, that's an interesting point too, because I mean, you could potentially get Kirk Cousins without losing out on draft capital if it's a deal that includes Myles Garrett. They're probably paying you to get Myles Garrett and to take Kirk Cousins.
That's
so you could get Kirk Cousins and add draft picks instead of subtracting draft picks. I know you don't want to trade Myles Garrett, but he's a guy that doesn't want to be around anymore. So make the best out of that situation, I guess, and still keep that number 2 overall pick and the first round picks for next year, not give away the farm like they did for Deshaun Watson. And then Atlanta, who hasn't had a pass rusher since Patrick Kearney in the early 2000s, can get a bona fide 15 sack per year type of guy in Myles Garrett.
Yeah. That would be the one way to do that, wouldn't it?
It would. I think that would be that was a I think that'd be a good move for both Cleveland and for Atlanta. Real quick, free agency gets underway on Monday. We mentioned that at the top of the show. I'm going to go through like the top 10 real quick, and I want to hear your thoughts on guys that you'd want with the Indianapolis Colts. So there are, I'm trying to pull up my, here we go. Okay. So it's not like a big name free agency class, like T. Higgins and Trey Smith are gone, but Javon Holland is a safety from the Miami Dolphins. Wide receiver Chris Godwin from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers coming off an injury. Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, who we talked about, both of those guys are available off the edge. DJ Reed, the number 2 cornerback for the Jets, who has been excellent across from Sauce Gardner. Amari Cooper, offensive tackle Ronnie Stanley, defensive end Josh Sweat, wide receiver Stephon Diggs, and then defensive end Hassan Reddick. Those are the top 10 available guys. And cornerback Travarius Ward from the 49ers. According to Pro Football Focus, those are the top 10 available guys that we have not talked about and that have not been franchise tagged.
Who was the last one you said?
Cornerback Travarius Ward from the 49ers.
Okay.
I mean, there's other guys out there too. Like it,
right.
The Colts are losing both their center and their right guard, and with Ryan Kelly and Will Fries to free agency. They could bring them back, but right now they're going to hit the open market. So there are offensive linemen that they could go after as well. And I can kind of go over some of those names as well.
I will say this, as far as center, I feel like we got the guy in the building, and I forgot his name.
Tanner Borda, the Wisconsin guy. Yeah.
I feel like he stepped in and did great in Ryan Kelly's absence. And I think with more reps, he's only going to prove that better. So I feel good with center, even if Ryan Kelly leaves. And I know Ryan Kelly was like, Pro Bowler and all that kind of stuff. But I'm okay with Ryan Kelly, if he leaves. Will Fries is going to be a little bit harder to Will Fries has done well. And so I think we'll have to address that somewhere. I'm trying to think if we've got anybody behind him that's worth putting into that spot. I can't remember off the top of my head. So maybe we're going to need that piece of the offensive line addressed somewhere, but I feel like that sort of stuff can happen in the draft so well. It's not like that was the make or break piece of our offensive line. I said before, we always need more edge rush. We have Buck, who pushes up the middle really well and is a great player. But our edge rushers have always been like streaky, or, sometimes you would hear of, somebody like, I just lost his name. And I should have this roster up in front of me. Kwity Paye. Sometimes you hear Kwity Paye's name a lot, and then he just disappears for games. You're just like, is Kwity Paye doing anything? It's like somehow they neutralize that. And so to have somebody in who's like every week people have to plan against, and I've said it before, I got really spoiled when we had Dwight Freeney and Robert Mathis. I just felt like, oh yeah, everybody has great rushers. No, everybody does not have great rushers. And to get somebody like, again, Joey Bosa is probably going to be super expensive, just like Myles Garrett would have been. I never even thought about the fact that I don't know who we would trade. I don't know who we would have that we would trade the Browns that they would want. I started to say, if they trade for AR, we go a whole different direction. I'm going to be like, what's going on? But, anyway.
Have to be some first-round picks, yeah.
Yeah, there would have to be some stuff happen there. But to get a good edge rusher and somebody in that secondary, whether it's a cornerback or a safety, and I'm not going to lie and say I know how great those guys that you mentioned would fit in with the Colts. Yeah. But if we got one of those, like a secondary and an edge rusher, and that's all we did in free agency, or like the big part, because you always like, hey, so-and-so has picked up this guy you've never heard of. And you're like, oh, fine, maybe he'll be some competition. But like as far as the big names, I would be happy with just those two positions. I'd be happy if we got one. If we got Joey Bosa, I'd probably be happy right there. I'd be like, okay, good. Get a bunch of no names now until we get to draft. And I know that that's not all Colts fans. Colts fans typically feel like Chris Ballard does not do enough at getting some talent in. And last year, the big cry was we need cornerbacks and safeties. So that's why I keep entertaining that idea. Last year, people are like, why didn't you address this? And they ask him that. And he's like, I feel good with the guys we got. And then, boy, did that line just come back over and over and over through the year as our cornerbacks just let people catch everything under the sun. And we're like, I just feel good with what we've got. I just feel good with what we got. How you feel about that, Chris Ballard? When you go into a forum, you just hear that over and over again. Yeah, I personally love that edge rush, but we definitely need to make sure that our cornerbacks are keeping people from catching the ball. So those two, that's what I'm.
It's the cornerback. I think both of those classes are deep, and the edge rusher has the more premier names. But yeah, there's a lot of guys that are going to be available for cornerbacks that aren't like number one, but are number 2 and number 3 guys. So it's there for the pickings. I don't know how much space Indianapolis has, but
I feel like if you can get a cornerback that is decent, that can be good enough if you have an edge rusher that's good. Again, they play off of one another. The better the edge rusher, the not as good your cornerback has to be, because the quarterback doesn't have time to let anything develop. But the worse edge rushers you have, the better cornerbacks you better have, because they can't get to him. He has all the time in the world to pick you apart. You got to have guys who can stand on an island, and it's harder to find. I feel like it's harder to find an edge rusher than to find a cornerback that's serviceable. To find that elite edge rusher, unless you're at the top of the draft, which we never are, except for the time we picked a guard, Quentin Nelson, which was good.
That's pretty good. That's a good pick.
Was good, but we're never I feel like we're never in the place to get the edge rusher. We did get Anthony Richardson at the top of the draft, and we could have picked an edge rusher, but we needed a quarterback at that point. Still do.
How did Laiatu Latu look this season for you guys? Because he was, that's the thing, my top edge rusher.
I just said that, and then he was the top defensive guy on the board when we
That's
picked
true.
him.
Yeah.
And we got him, and he was supposed to be this edge rusher, and he had a few glimpses, and maybe he's going to grow this year and will be that. I totally forgot. I'm like, we never get that. And last year that's what we did. We went for the top defensive guy on the board who was an edge rusher.
Yeah.
I can't believe I just slipped all of that in my mind as I'm talking about this. But how great would it be to have Latu and Bosa? Of course, then you're like wanting that embarrassment of riches. You're like, I just want everybody.
Yeah. Speaking of wanting everybody, I have used a tool on sportrack.com, which has like the salaries and everything and knows how the salary cap works. And I was able to get the Vikings cap hit to 100 or available cap space to $115 million by restructuring contracts
and letting everybody go.
And I only had to let actually 2 people go. Like, it's mostly like just putting void years on the end of the contracts of the people, because it spreads the money out for years they're not going to play for you. Which is a little bit fine because the cap is growing exponentially recently. So like it kind of gives you the opportunity to do that. I cut our center Garrett Bradbury, and I cut our backup tight end Josh Oliver. We're going to get Will Fries. We're going to get Ryan Kelly. We're going to pair those two together because they have.
You're going to take both of them, huh?
Yeah, we're going to get both of those guys. And then so that's going to be the center and right guard. We're going to get Tevin Jenkins from the Chicago Bears as our left guard. We have a run game. Our offense is now pretty much complete. We're also going to get Tutu Atwell from the Los Angeles Rams, a cheap number 3 wide receiver that can block well and can be a weapon. He has been a big 100-yard game guy before in the absence of some of those Rams receivers. We're going to get 3 cornerbacks too. We're going to get Carlton Davis from the Lions. We're going to get DJ Reed
from free agency.
This is based on the market value that a Sport Rack has. And obviously some of these guys are going to go over the market value. Some of them are going to go under. So like, it's like not the, like we have money to spend, And the Vikings obviously aren't going to do all the moves that I did, but so these are mostly just like, okay, here's my wish list. DJ Reed, and then at nickel cornerback, Mike Hilton. We have to replace 3 cornerbacks. Our 3 starters are all gone in free agency, so we're getting Carlton Davis, DJ Reed, and Mike Hilton, and then maybe we'll draft a guy. We're gonna get some defensive linemen. We're gonna get Levi Unzuurike from the Detroit Lions. We saw how well Jalen Carter did as a pass rusher up the middle, and how well that helps the Eagles. Unzuurike is not like a good run stopper, but he can disrupt up the middle. So we're going to bring him in as well. And then we're going to roll from there. And we are going to not have to draft for need in the draft. We only have 4 draft picks right now. So we're just going best player available the whole way. We're just, loading up whatever positions we need to in the draft. And we win the Super Bowl in 2025 behind JJ McCarthy. So that is the plan.
Sounds like you've got a plan.
That is the plan for the Minnesota Vikings 2025 offseason, and it will lead to the Minnesota Vikings 2025 Super Bowl. And Brandon can't say anything because he's not there, and we haven't gotten any news about a Myles Garrett trade happening, so he has not been able to close the deal on that. And Skol Vikings.
Yeah, and we didn't even talk about Jair Alexander and where he might go.
Well, wherever he goes, he's going to play 5 games for them and then get injured. So
nobody wants that.
Most of the time, he's not like he doesn't get like super. I think Brandon could tell you this too. Like it's almost like he's holding out because like he'll play, and it's these like small nagging injuries that it's like, okay, this has happened for 2 or 3 years now, where it's these small nagging injuries that typically don't keep players out for as long as you're kept out. Do you want to be here? And we found out after the season, the answer was no. He does not want to be here anymore. So you've got it. He's a guy like Zadarius Smith in Detroit that Brandon and I also know well. You got to keep him happy or else he's not going to want to play.
Yeah. Brandon doesn't get to be here to like weigh in on all this stuff we're saying. It's probably killing him wherever he's at right now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the one thing about Green Bay is that the draft is going to be there. I think it's being held at like an Applebee's or something. And the other thing is that free agents, don't want to live in Green Bay for half of the year, just like they don't want to live in Minneapolis sometimes for half the year because of all the snow and stuff. So it's harder to attract free agents. And there's a chance that Minnesota doesn't get some of these guys. And I will be sad about it, and there's a chance that Green Bay doesn't get the guys that Brandon wants. And
I like how you said there's a chance. There's a chance we don't get all these guys I just said. Slim chance.
Yeah, it's a very slim chance that we don't. I've spoken with Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. I've told him this is what we're doing, and he has agreed. So,
well, the legal tampering period is what starts Monday, right? When does actual start? Is it?
Yeah. So all the deals that are made on Monday and Tuesday become official on Wednesday, but we'll already know the deals on Monday and Tuesday.
And is that 4:00 Eastern?
On Wednesday, I'm not sure. On Monday, it usually starts in the morning, like 9 or 10 a.m. So like those are when the names start rolling in. That's when Kirk Cousins was within the first hour of free agency, of that Monday free agency last year. We found out he was going to the Atlanta Falcons. The Vikings got a couple of players in that first hour. So like these conversations are happening as we're having this conversation right now. They moved
the legal tampering period up, and so the actual tampering had to move up as well, and it's happening now.
so a lot of these deals are already in place, and so hopefully I'm right that Will Fries and Ryan, they were so good. I know Will Fries got injured. They were so good when they were in the run game, and the Vikings interior offensive line against the run, like it's been all out of sorts. Nobody's in rhythm. It's like a toddler's dance recital, and the Swan Lake is like what the Green Bay Packers and what the Detroit Lions all have. And I think Will Fries and Ryan Kelly can start getting us towards that Swan Lake.
They're good players. I like both of them. I feel like Tanner Bortolini can take the place that Ryan Kelly would vacate. And I don't know about, Will Fries' position, but I have heard a Green Bay Packers fan, just to kind of keep Brandon's spirit alive here. I have heard a different Green Bay Packer fan say that they're really shooting and hoping that Dio Adengbo goes to them. And I'm like, okay, stop it. But I think he's a free agent also. He's leaving.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, the Colts have a lot of free agents, which is,
and it's a weird year. I don't know what to expect from any of it because I feel like Chris Ballard has to do things different than he has in the past, and I don't know what that's going to look like at all. So I'm like, really, it used to be back when Ryan Grigson was the GM, you get really excited about free agent because he always would be pulling some free agent deal, and they never turned out, but or never were great, but it was exciting during free agency. And I haven't had that for a while. So I'm kind of looking forward to this free agency period. The problem is you said it with Green Bay and Minnesota. It's hard to get free agents to want to come play in Indy because it's not like Indianapolis is great.
Right.
I feel like it's a very welcoming place, but you also don't have Peyton Manning there as the draw. You also don't have Andrew Luck there as the draw. Now, Anthony Richardson's there, and, people see the potential. And so there's some who may be like, hey, I can come in and kind of help with that, and maybe it'll turn out great. But right now, it's like, what do we have that's drawing in these free agents? Well, we'll see. We'll see come Monday.
Yeah. I mean, and the Colts, they're set. Like, they have a good wide receiver group, like a very underrated wide receiver group. And if Tanner Borrolini... You don't agree?
I do. I really want to see some growth from AD Mitchell. I was high on him, and he would get out there, just didn't look like he was putting his all into it. And I heard, you heard after the season that our locker room, several people felt like it was just being mailed in sometimes by some of the players. That's kind of what I felt with him. Like a lot. He would kind of go, the ball's coming. He's not going to like stretch real hard for it. He kind of puts his hands up. It does not, if it doesn't hit right in his hands, or even if it did hit in his hands, sometimes he wouldn't hold on to it. I felt like there were so many times where Anthony Richardson kind of got thrown under the bus for his inaccuracy, where he was hitting AD Mitchell what looked perfect, and it just was not happening. He was dropping it, and not just AD Mitchell, but he was one that I had higher hopes for, him coming in with a chip on his shoulder, wanting to show everybody you messed up by not picking me earlier, because he thought he should have gone in the first round.
Yeah.
And yet he wasn't. So, but I know receivers typically year 3 is their big year. I'm hoping next year is a better year for him. I think Josh Downs is great. I think Michael Pittman, he just always looks like he's getting like hit hard on these like little catches. He's not the, Alec Pierce. Now there's a fun guy to watch. He had the highest yards per catch.
Yeah, he just goes 80 yards down the field and reels it in
like 7 times in the year, and he's like at the top.
Yep.
But I did enjoy the growth we saw from him, because early, like with him when he was early on, it was a lot of that too, where ball was right there and he just wasn't catching it. And so I agree. I think with Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, Alec Pierce, and AD Mitchell, who all right now are still under contract, I feel like that's good. Let's hit those defensive side of the ball some, and let's get a tight end maybe who is going to be out there and be a difference maker, and then let's make AR better. That's
and then it's back to the Houston's maybe downward trending. Maybe it's the Indianapolis Colts' time to run the AFC South once again, like they did during the Peyton Manning years.
I mean, I hope so. I know the Jags are hoping they're the ones, and the Tennessee Titans long for the day when they could be in that conversation again. But I think it's going to be a year or two for them. So.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Is there anything else we want to talk about today?
I don't. Well, you remember this is just real quick. All of the burglarized homes during games by NFL players. They have arrested and charged 7 Chilean nationals for those burglaries. So maybe there won't be any more. Maybe Joe Burrow will get to sleep safely at night.
You ever wonder how like guys are like, you know what we should do? Let's make our thing robbing NFL players when they're at games. That's going to be our thing.
It's like the Wet Bandits of Home Alone. It's exactly like that. It's exactly like the plot to Home Alone. I'm surprised it wasn't Joe Pesci that was doing all of that. It was 7 Chilean nationals, and it was NFL homes, it was NBA homes. It was not Baker Mayfield's home because, as we all know, he lived at the Cleveland Browns stadium for most of his life, and that it's still probably is still where he lives, even though he doesn't play there anymore.
He still lives there, even if he's playing for Tampa Bay.
They had those commercials running for a good 3 months after he was cut by the team. So, I'm just gonna tell myself he still lives there.
They start a big ad campaign right before a change happens, and you just laugh every time you see it. You're like, that didn't work out, did it, advertisers?
It did not.
All right. Well, hey, that's going to do it for us today. But do join us next week because we are back, and we're going to talk about what did happen on Monday and Tuesday. See you guys next time on the Football Fandemic.